You slip into the water and your body already knows what to do. Hold your breath. Kick. Reach forward with one arm and pull yourself through the current. Nobody had to explain this to you from scratch. Some part of it feels instinctive. But here's the question nobody asks. How far back does that instinct actually go? Here's what the evidence actually shows. Almost no other primate on Earth swims willingly. Chimpanzees avoid deep water entirely. Gorillas do too. Watch footage of most primates near a river and you'll see hesitation, sometimes outright panic. Humans are the outlier. Somewhere in your evolutionary past, your ancestors didn't just tolerate water. They moved into it on purpose over and over again. There is no single moment in the fossil record where a caption reads, "Humans learned to swim." Swimming doesn't leave footprints. It doesn't leave stone tools. For most of human history, the only trace it could possibly leave is written on the body itself. And in 2019, a researcher found exactly that. Eric Trinkhaus, an anthropologist at Washington University in St. Louis, examined the preserved ear canals of 77 ancient skulls, spanning Neanderthals and early modern humans across tens of thousands of years. He was looking for a specific kind of bone growth, a small bony bump that forms inside the ear canal after repeated exposure to cold water. Doctors today call it swimmer's ear. Surfers get it. Kayakers get it. Anyone who spends enough time in cold water again and again over years develops it. Trinkhaus found it in over half of the Neanderthal skulls he studied. That number is staggering. In early modern humans from the same general time period, the rate was closer to 20%. In Neanderthals specifically, it was just over 56%, more than double. One particularly striking case came from a skull found at La Chapelle-aux-Saints in France, a Neanderthal specimen studied by scientists for over a century. The bony growth in its ear canal is still visible today, a permanent record of countless hours spent in cold water. This doesn't prove Neanderthals were swimming laps. What it strongly suggests is something almost as interesting. They were in the water constantly, diving for shellfish, wading through rivers, exploiting coastlines and lakes for food. Far more than the broken stone tools and animal bones in the archaeological record ever suggested on their own. Your body can tell a story your tools can't. Now here's where it gets more complicated and more honest. The geographic spread of these ear growths doesn't line up perfectly with where you'd expect. Not every Neanderthal site near water shows high rates. Not every cold climate location does either. Trinkhaus and his colleagues were careful to note that genetics might play a role too, not just behavior. Science doesn't always hand you a clean answer. Sometimes it hands you a strong clue and a permission slip to keep asking questions. So the bones suggest ancient humans and their evolutionary cousins were regularly submerged in water as far back as roughly 100,000 years ago, maybe further. But bones can't tell you what swimming actually looked like. For that, you need something else entirely. You need someone to draw it. In 1933, a Hungarian explorer named Laszlo Almasi was mapping remote stretches of the Sahara Desert in Egypt when he stumbled onto a cave in the Wadi Sura region. Inside, painted across the rock walls, were dozens of human figures. Some appeared to be swimming. Arms extended forward, bodies stretched horizontal, legs trailing behind in a pose unmistakably similar to the front crawl millions of people learn in swimming lessons today. The paintings are estimated to be roughly 8,000 to 10,000 years old, created during a period scientists call the Green Sahara, when this now brutal desert was covered in lakes, rivers, and grassland. Picture that for a second. The driest, most unforgiving landscape on the planet used to be full of water, full of fish, full of people who spent their days moving through it exactly the way you do at a pool today. The cave became known as the Cave of Swimmers, and it wasn't an isolated find. Similar swimming poses would later show up in Egyptian tomb art, Hittite carvings, Assyrian reliefs, and early Greek pottery, all independently arriving at the same basic technique. One arm reaches forward, the other pulls back, the legs kick. That's not a coincidence. That's convergent discovery. Different cultures, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, landed on the same solution to the same problem, because that's simply the most efficient way a human body moves through water. Now reconstruct the scene. It's roughly 9,000 years ago. You're standing at the edge of a lake in what is now the middle of the Sahara Desert, though nothing around you looks like desert at all. Reeds line the shore, fish move beneath the surface. Somewhere nearby, someone is wading out past their waist, then diving forward into deeper water. They're not doing this for sport. They're doing this because the lake is where the food is, where the cool relief from the heat is, where a faster route to the next camp might be if you're willing to cross rather than walk around. Swimming wasn't recreation, it was infrastructure. Fish meant protein without the risk of chasing down a fleeing animal on land. A lake crossing meant shaving hours, sometimes days, off a journey that would otherwise mean walking around miles of shoreline through open territory where predators were watching. Water wasn't an obstacle in this world. It was a shortcut, a pantry, and a highway all at once, and the only price of admission was knowing how to move through it without drowning. That's not a small skill to hand down. Someone had to teach it. A parent guiding a child's first attempts in shallow water, correcting their kicks, watching nervously from the shore. The same quiet ritual that happens at pools and lakes today happened here too, just without the goggles, without the lifeguard, with only trust between generations standing in for both. Here's the twist that should genuinely surprise you. Not every ancient civilization treated swimming the same way, and not every one of them valued it. In ancient Mesopotamia, swimming was known, but it was rare. Ancient written records describe river ordeals where survival depended on the ability to swim, framed as an unusual, almost extraordinary skill, not something the average person could do. In parts of ancient Assyria, people crossing dangerous rivers didn't rely purely on their own strokes. They used inflated goat skins, essentially the world's first flotation devices, gripping onto them while kicking through fast-moving currents too dangerous to cross unaided. And in some ancient societies, swimming carried social weight far beyond survival. Certain cultures viewed water itself as sacred or dangerous, something not to be casually entered. Being a strong swimmer in one region might mark you as skilled and resourceful. In another, it might mark you as an outsider entirely. The same skill, wildly different meanings, depending entirely on where and when you were born. There's an even stranger layer buried in this history. In first-century China, some northern writers described the swimming abilities of southern coastal populations as almost suspicious, tying it to their darker skin and framing it as something foreign, something separate from what northern culture valued. Water, to many northern populations, was treated as sacred and untouchable, not a place you casually dove into for fun or convenience. Meanwhile, populations along coastlines and rivers everywhere else on Earth were treating the exact same skill as basic survival knowledge, taught to children the same way you might teach a child to walk. One species, one shared instinct, completely different cultural stories layered on top of it. Now think about your own relationship with water for a moment. You probably learned to swim in a pool, maybe with a certified instructor, maybe with armbands and a parent nearby. It felt like a modern convenience, something invented for suburban backyards and community centers. But you were relearning something your body has apparently been capable of for tens of thousands of years. The instinct to hold your breath underwater, the reflex to kick, the same basic stroke that shows up in a Saharan cave painting, in a Neanderthal's water-damaged ear canal, in a Greek vase, in your own last trip to the beach. None of that technology changed. Only the water around it did. Think about the last time you watched a toddler at a pool, arms flailing, refusing to put their face in the water, terrified of something their body will eventually trust completely. That same slow, nervous process of learning to trust water probably played out on the shore of a Saharan lake 9,000 years ago, and in a cold European river 100,000 years before that. The fear looks the same. The eventual confidence looks the same. Only the backdrop changes. You slip into the water and your body already knows what to do. It always has. If this changed how you think about where instinct ends and history begins, subscribe. There's more of this coming.